All right, the time has come. We'll begin our recitation. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious God, the subduer from the Shaka clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you, wise then, I prostrate. with pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme sign, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, unto you I prostrate. You are immaculate, three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to dustness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. And will also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community and tending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. Seek and envision things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the flow of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death.
Baba Kunjo Sola Cha Zelo Dige Dagi Dobo Duje Na Chandende Yebu Kawa Chaku Kumbor Kilonji Gindu Jumbo Dan Janju Sembe Gindu Jumbo Dan Taba Jitu Shude Diz Kondende Samo Nawa Shijawe Chuje Nandagi Tengen Zela Nyubo Yande Ze Janju Semba Semba Jengo Baba Chere Se Wanju Shira De Parudu Samo Giovanni la Nambata Jim Bumbo Nambo de Da Laya Rajin Doba Namba Tao Tene Sanji Sedan Temba Sheri Bu Janju Semba Semba Baba Chere Se Wanju La De Meso Viji Bu Kala La Shira De Parudu Samo Jeba Chuba Deba Tenji Dan Aparaja de Geze Mebala Janju Samba Samba Aba Jere de Onjuki Sedan Demba Sheri da Debula de Geze Meso Sheri Bu Rije Pomo Kalala Shira de Baru de Chemba Sama Cheba Cheba Deba de Ditar Namba Tawa Jate Aba Deda Laya Rajingi Tomba Namba Yanda Ba Jesu Tao Su Tomba Tomba Yesu Tomba Ni Shema Tomba Nile Jan Sushen Mayino, Deshendo, Soadan, Dushedan, Dushedan, Number Shebana, Tomba, Terebo, Deda Jodanje, Tomba Nidi, Sini Meba, Majeba, Mangaba, Rimadan, Treva, Treva, Meba, Gawa, Meba, O, Sherebo, Deda Wana, Tomba Nila, Sume, Sorba. Dujime, Dujime, Nambar Sheba, Mime, Nawame, Name, Cheme, Lume, Yime, Sume, Dame, Trime, Rum, Rejame, Chume, Do, Meje, Kame, Bane, Ije, Kame, Ije, Nambar Shebe, Kanje, Bato, Yame, Mariba, Me, Mariba, Seba, Me, Kashi, Me, Kashi, Sebe, Bato, Yamedo, Tejindo, Dunga. Ujungwada Gobada Name Ishime Tobame Mado Paya Medo Sharibu Dawana Jaju Sambana Toba Mebe Shir Sheraji Barudo Chimbala Tenje Nede Samba Tiba Meji Traba Mede Chinje Lole Shindun Nyangele Debe Tarara Chindu Tuzundu Namba Shube Sange Tamche Jan Sheragi Barudo Chimbala Nana Meba Yanda Bazobe Janjudu Mubrazo Barsan Yesu de Dawena Sheraji Barudo Chimbenga Reba Chimbenga Lana Mebenga Minyamba da Nyambenga Tunge Danje Radu Shivar Jibenga Mizu Benna Demba Shepa Chade Sheraji Barudo Chimbenga Meba Tiyata Gade Gade Para Sangade Buddhist Lord Terebo Janju Samba Samba Shembo Teta Sheraji Barudo Shembo Samola Labar Tene Jomde de Dingen Zendele Shende Janju Samba Samba Jambo Papa Cherise Wanchu Leso Shecha Jene Leso Riji Bu Tede Shino Tede La Juje Temba Shindo Sheraje Parudo Chemba Samola Chebar Chatende Sheba Napya Jesu Yira Jonde Dege Je Kazene Sedan Demba Shere Dadi Boda Janju Samba Samba Baba Jere de Wanjudan, Tamjedan, Dembe, Kor, Tedadan, Tadan, Nedan, Tama, Yedan, Teza Jebe, Iran de Jomden, Deji, Sumbala, Omba,
Page 12, 11. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgriha, the vulture speak, together with a great assembly of monks and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, felt profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble the Bodhisattva was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Venerable Shariputra, spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond? Then the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, O Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither pure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formation, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eyes, up to no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to there is no sphere of mental consciousness, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond, and because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times, by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the noble Bodhisattvas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the whole gathering, the world with its gods, men, and the gods and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
No, 들어가다. 먼저 드린다. 이게 돈이 쉽상이 좀 돈이 쉽상숨. 아니 다 로사발라 참지 다시 될래 최소 sabine 다시 될래 쉬고요 손하지.
Thank you. And as 2022 has passed and we begin the year 2023, on behalf of Yuta Foundation, I wish you a happy new year.
그래서 제가 들리는데 다만도 니돈이 슈자니디 자 주저 줘버렸어. 다 이내양 하나도 니돈이 슈자니 나라. 아니 수수게다 내 약부 체유나 수수게 내 약부 체유나 가고 아니 지금 내 마디바 내 미케어 채워줘다 아니 수수 지금 교바제 되는 아니 교바제 안들이 쳐버렸어. 근데 제바이나 아니 로디나라 개와치교디 앞에 이거치교도 마 시진네 투야게 되게 제 가와체와 양이 야고체와 가와공 만들고 체와 아니 교바제 되는 개심부터 해서
So as it is a new year, 2022 is past. That time has passed. However, all that we did during the year 2022, the virtuous activities we engaged in, those should be the object of our meditation on celebration of virtuous activities. And those things that were not constructive, non-virtuous actions done in the past year may be the object of our meditation on remorse, so that we do not repeat similar actions. And if we do this now, then in the year to come, our virtuous activities will continue to increase, and any non-virtuous activities we tend to engage in, we will overwhelm them with our rejoicing and remorse, rejoicing in that which is constructive, remorse for that which is not.
아니 도바티네데니 아니 로무 니말라야 다와르 다와슈 조도도야 다와 조도도 좀 말하는 삼로당 체벌로 가고 네 디벌로 가고 마디벌로 교바제 아니 나시 니마 배는 먼저 가 도바딩이 주는 조직이 세무 예바 총화데 니모샤 니모는 디버체바데 세무샤서 어디를 숨고 제가 드리기 말하죠 예와 지교들라 제수이랑 거나 아니 개와 패도 이거 지교들라 교바체나 아니 이거도 마세도 그래서 이 패라를 납신 보여래서
Now, for those of us who are practicing in the tradition of the secret Mantrayana, we have vows that we protect and transgressions that we wish to avoid. And so as we do this, we may do this with the month, the year, and then the month, and then each day in mind as we labor to protect our vows. And we may think at the end of the month, review our actions. If there are any transgressions for which we are responsible, confess those and repair those. And all the virtuous actions we have engaged in, we may rejoice in those. And in the tradition of the secret Mantrayana, following the illustrious Atisha, who recommended that any non-virtues engaged in during the day should be confessed that very night and the vows repaired, and any non-virtues of the night should be addressed the following morning. And if we do this, if we rejoice in our virtuous actions and confess and repair non-virtuous transgressions, the practice is very constructive.
다 된다. 간다 샤돔 제세디 아니 다 간다 랑라. 동의 용액이 곧 까보고요. 대화 용색이 곧 치고요. 세상 네 용액 탐험 약쇼직 아니 샤돔 제데레스 이거 채워도 봐샤 개와 채워도 제수이랑 채돼 엔들 제가 개침고 편침고들에 손을
The practice of confession and repairing broken vows is the very means for preventing further and future non-virtue and increasing our tendency, if we have it, to practice virtue. And so it is the very best method to review one's actions, rejoice in one's virtues, and feel a sense of remorse for non-virtues and then repair them.
다 이내 용줄기 로사와디 나마다 수속이 된다 된거데 로디 아니 된다 된거지 홀라만 로와 로디나는 배다랑이 배추냐면 체는 로디 홀라만 로라랑이 비지 된다 된거 아니 다만도 라브린다 주주 나는 셰바는 체계이나 아니 다 로디네 고쪽네 아니 랑 비지 된다 된거지는 치마 대화는 대화기야 로투야 아니 고도도 주고 되게 꾸는 게 돈은 스파스 펜바 상고 땅으로 해서
So now as the new year begins, we have the opportunity to make the year to come very meaningful, to make it purposeful, to never squander it. And this is our practice from this point forward, to make sure that our time is purposeful. And we do this by attending to the way of the Bodhisattva, as well as the great treatise on the path to enlightenment. And through these practices, through these texts and these practices, our satisfaction, gratification, and contentment will increase, and we will labor to develop an altruistic intent that benefits others.
다들 말하면서 티버친 부처를 죄주로 장기 티버친 부처를 라고요. 티버친 부처를 라고 꿀롱디 아니 간데지 거라스나 선제 탐제 선제를 예와면 선제는 사녀의 모신의 마시게 된데 처벌을 내봐. 선제 탐제 아니 배다 야와다 대마 등에다 태워. 어디게 꿀롱디 생각하고 요레스 아니 티가면다 말하면서 안데 내가 말하면서 거의 전부는 돼. 아니 지금 뭐 모토도 신이 배말아서 다다게 배 고객이 아니 깨워다 대박에 최제 그거 토바 되게 꾸롱상고 되게 꾸롱다 말론다 제배 거네 아니 꾸롱 편바야고 땅에 있나 아니 랑이 내 가르치 제가 있나 양 제가 탐지 취해서도 그래서 시대가 좀 저도 그래서
As we study the Bodhicharya Avatara, the way of the Bodhisattva, the text is a Mahayana text, and in order to ensure that the practices too are Mahayana practices, they must conform to the altruistic intent of the Mahayana to benefit sentient beings, every last sentient being, with no prejudice and no bias, so that all sentient beings are endowed with contentment and separated from causes of suffering. And when this is the intention and it conjoins all of our actions, then our activities will benefit our environment, the world as a whole, which is torn now with violent conflict and sickness, but through the Mahayana intention, we labor to ensure that our practices are Mahayana practices, and through conjoining all of our activities with the Mahayana intention, we may ensure that our practices are Mahayana practices that benefit every last sentient being.
랑기 룽아 예수들에서 랑기 룽아 예수들이 아니 이게 내가 가르쳐봐 이나양 아니 시에나 펜바 근데 랑라 문에 막 시에나 펜바 아니 지금 밖에 랑기 룽에도 봐 쇼도 대화도 거는 패야리 남나 랑기 고수도 내가 뒤치기도나 아니 지금 무슨 몇줘봐라 주바생이 자기 요레스 아니 랑기 고수도 줘봐디 되게 자기면 아니 저 무슨 몇줘봐라 주바생이 자기 요말 제가 장교선 몇줘봐라 주바세 랑기 꿀웅 하고 쌤이 꿀웅 상고 근데 류기 좀 제가 만나봐 아니 많이 보는 시에나 메라타운 뚜뚜뚜 많이 보는 시에나 편마제로 뼈봤다 나한테 채소나 아니 그 장교선 몇줘봐라 주바 차기로 와 제가 되게 랑기 고수도 줘봐 상고체나 장교선 몇줘봐라 주바 랑기 고수도 줘봐서 상고만 중앙이나 아니 장교선 몇줘봐라 그것은 자기 요말에서
Now, as we enter the way of the Bodhisattva, the way of the Bodhisattva is the way of the three doors of body, speech, and mind, and any and every activity of body, speech, and mind. That every last activity benefit others, and that we never harm others and never harm ourselves, so that one and all may experience lasting separation from suffering and ensure their future contentment and satisfaction. This is the path, this is the way of the Bodhisattva, the training in the Bodhisattva conduct. It is a conduct of body, speech, and mind, and we enter that very training, we enter the way of the Bodhisattva through body, speech, and mind. When we fail to ensure that our actions of body, speech, and mind conform with the Mahayana Dharma, then we do not enter the way of the Bodhisattva. But wherever our intention is the Mahayana intention, it is the intention never to harm others, always to benefit others, to praise others and support others. These are the trainings of the Bodhisattva, trainings of body, speech, and mind. And we enter the very way of the Bodhisattva through these three doors, body, speech, and mind. And when we fail to do so, we do not enter the way of the Bodhisattva.
삼바상고 전주그 샘스게디 아니 가레스나 대화 탐지 두약이 자기 유 용의 탐지 세약에 대한 전주그 샘비 여바이나 아니 동의 탐지 세 두고 여바 대화 탐지 두고 여바디 아니 근데 인도 아 전주그 샘을 라보고 여서 전주그 샘을 랍세디 아니 라기 전주그 샘을 랍 두약이 차진 상황에서 보고 그래서 제가 네 차진 상황라 아니 당고 전주그 샘이 편시한 거죠. 편 마시는 전주선도 론도 얘기 말해. 전주선 편시한 거를 대체로 제도를 누구 당고 가서 편 되게 되시. 그럼 요래 이게 먼저 사월에 나 뒤에 되게 편 되다 댐백이 전주선데 라는 귤라 깨버 쳐발라. 나마 돈은 거 제발도 파고 거래. 비치도라 아니 다 전주도 운이밖에 샤벨도 오제. 아니 샤벨 요 나네 당고 아니 쳐봐표 아니 예바 차차 근데 jam도 되게 돼 아니 맞다 맞은 다 시에서 해서
The benevolence and generosity of the altruistic intent, the very intent to ensure contentment for all sentient beings, the intention itself requires a cause and condition for its arising. When one intends to benefit others, ensures the contentment of others, eliminates the suffering of others, and this is their intention, this is, in this way, the mind of enlightenment itself. The mind of enlightenment is that which ensures the contentment and satisfaction of sentient beings and eliminates their discontents, one and all. This is the mind of enlightenment. The mind of enlightenment brings this about. And for that reason, we train in bodhicitta. Now, in order to develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, we have to come by the conditions that allow for it. And in order to come by those conditions in the first case, we must recognize the benefits of bodhicitta itself. For without a recognition of the benefits of bodhicitta, we will have no enthusiasm for it. For this reason, the first chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva concerns itself with the benefits of bodhicitta. And then when one recognizes the benefits of bodhicitta, one begins to develop the mind of enlightenment. And in order to develop the mind of enlightenment, one must have sufficient autonomy. One must have sufficient merit. And to ensure that one has this autonomy, this merit, one engages in the topic of the second chapter, confession. And this confession, the topic itself, begins with the presentation of offerings, which is followed with prostration and then refuge.
예, 다 되네. 다 유티 자기는 되게 좀 있나? 다 전에 강을 아니 가르쳐 버렸으나 다 랑기 마람들로 가르쳐 버렸으나 마람들로 또와 통함해 봤네. 아니 마람들 레다 이모 공부쇼 치를 왕기 아니 마람들로 셈비나라 하자 이모 예 하자 이모 사벨레 그래서 빼먹고 사들 어디서 다걸 쳐봐 내가 샤바 쳐야 돼 샤바 샤바 맞이는 아니 말하는 유모 왕게 아니 저 밖에 자주선 게마투야 아니 이제 망고요 어디서 봐 다걸 쳐지더라 아니 샤바 쳐 아니 난 다들 요니베 난생에 다시 답제 시와들에 숨었어.
And that which prevents the mind of enlightenment from arising are habitual tendencies toward mental afflictions and negative action. These tendencies have been present since beginningless time and deeply embedded. They are that which must be removed, extirpated, in order for the mind of enlightenment ever to arise. For that reason, the fourth point of the chapter is confession.
오야 다들 이제 가서 나 샤바 제야는 당고 지단 다들 거라 다 샤바 제요를 유료로 계산 걸로 kunju 숨스 다들 전주 그런 자와 쓰지 쉬시는 때문에 찾다 전주 자와 쓰디 아무 이제 저것도 이거다 봐 장주님부 치지 팔 산제 남아 잡수 제 최도 찬주 선바이 소라에 대시 겹을 제세다 모두비 점부디야 보시 뭐 신공이 어디서다 점부 되라 난다 전주 시에 자와 대시 송장
Now, confession itself takes place with the personages and objects to which the confession is to be addressed in mind. And if we return to the 26th verse of the second chapter, Confession, on page 41, this will remind us of the object of the confession. Verse 26, until the essence of enlightenment is reached, I go for refuge to the Buddhas. Also, I take refuge in the Dharma and in all the host of Bodhisattvas. One must understand refuge as the first step in confession.
다들 점도 되라 점 저당 없어도 점도 되라 릭니 치고했다 유의 점보다 제부 점보 유접다 제접 점보니 요레스 다 유접 생에 알아서나 나라도 다 신유를 그 심보 하나도 다 접점바고 산게 아니 이 부규를 예배 투지 좀 민지 전부터 잔중 생도 지역군조 아니 지역군조들이 남도 또 줄을 깨베게 장주 자세 파바스라다 자세 파바도 아니 가르치는 유zul을 점으로 제거하디 유의 점으로 생생해서
When identifying refuge, there are two types of refuge. They are the causal refuge and the resultant refuge. These are the two forms of refuge. The causal refuge is others, the Buddhas, who are the teacher, and the Mahakaruna and Bodhicitta in the mind of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, which is the Dharma. And all persons with these minds, Mahakaruna and Bodhicitta, all individuals who have produced these minds are the Arya Sangha. These are the three refuges, the causal refuges. These three then are the teacher, the Buddha, the actual Dharma, and the Sangha, those individuals in whom these minds, Mahakaruna and Bodhicitta, have developed. The Sangha then supports the increase of these minds in others. This is their purpose and the benefit of the refuge. The resultant refuge is the event in the future for oneself through one's own training in the cause of enlightenment, one's own state of Buddhahood. When that time comes, this is the resultant refuge of one's own in oneself. And the cause for that is the truth of the path and the truth of cessation, which are the resultant dharma. And that time, oneself, when they have developed these two, the path and cessation, as they become support for the furtherance of the path and cessation, that is the resultant Sangha. Until the time of enlightenment, one's own future enlightenment in this respect is the resultant refuge. We speak of refuge and bodhicitta, and when we speak of refuge, refuge is the mind that commits itself to training in the tradition of these three rarities, the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, and one trains until enlightenment following these three. So this is refuge. These are refuge and bodhicitta. And there's an example given of entrusting oneself or agreeing to serve a king in their kingdom. And this is used as a metaphor for refuge and bodhicitta. When one entrusts oneself to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, it is as though one has agreed to serve a king and abide by the rules of that kingdom and be protected there in that kingdom. And when one has entrusted oneself to the king, when one has entrusted oneself to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, then afterwards, developing the mind of enlightenment, that is like paying fealty and following the law of the land in that kingdom. So this is the metaphor that is used. So these then are refuge and bodhicitta. And as we begin this section on confession, one engages in confession with a support, particular support. And that support is the very refuge. And in order to make the refuge clear to you, I began with this description of the refuge. Hello. Now, as we begin confession, confession is performed through the application of the four antidote powers, or the four forces. Now, when you hear these four forces, keep them in mind. They are the force of support, the force of the application of the antidotes, the force of remorse, and the force of future restraint.
제사다 당모 먼저 가르스나 당모 수술을 예밭 예 수술을다 예밭 마고바 제디 예밭 마고바 탑체 배바 제디 내가 당모도 차다 당모 수술 예밭 마고바 제디 단 수술 배당하고 지속도 당이네 수술을 교연도 수술을 마셔라 수술을 예밭 마고 제디 당모는 답지 제조를 당고도 더 된나시 당모 거기 교연이 마고바 예밭 마고바 배바 제디 답시 당고를 했어 다 이나양 아니 나라도 가리어서나 단다지 예벌 마고바 생에디 데스칼레 하고 싶어요. 그래서 나는 통만 매반에 제네 나라도 배 니모가 바자다. 니모가 남도 요원기 아니 나저라 예바 고야기 년가 차고 자기 망고 여바 인도 아니 예바가 계속 거바 좋나 아니 예바 고조디 남매도 마샤바세 예바 거는 지금 말에 삼네 아니 예바를 타르바 제 탑디 아니 숨어야지 좀 되게 숨어야래 숨어지.
These four antidote towers are best taken by looking first at the force of future restraint. Through restraint, we endeavor in the first case not to be at fault, not to make a transgression, to ensure that we do not make the mistake for which we later must confess and then repair the fault. But this is very difficult for us in the first case to restrain ourselves from all misdeeds because of our tendency that has been in place since beginningless time, as we are thoroughly under the influence of the mental afflictions. It is very difficult for us to ensure that we don't make any mistakes at all. In fact, the mental afflictions, as we are under their sway, nearly ensure that we will make a mistake. But in order to reduce the number of mistakes that we make, we apply this antidote power of restraint itself.
Oh, yes, that's about to teaching. This one is children topstar. His never join and never the shabba top. And the children topstar, children top bear with us. That children top bear said that on this rest, not around the Lord. The never the new, the never the Jebba gave never done, ranching in Yavas. On the Jebba gave Yavas, don't to better that, don't but cannon your own, don't but cannon to the Marani cannon. And cannon comes at Chaba. Or the digging about the Gawa. And it's cannon men are young, the ranching the way you better on the sword Jebba the water. And it's a packet that the Luigi going to Jebba the Maji going to Jebba Mawachi, ranching. Ibarwa, or Chesan, or the ranching the Ibar Chesan, Diniga, but Tabar Chevala, and he children the tops and the somewhat as well. Okay, this is what I never graduated Tayag.
No.
Show us.
No. The Buddha himself, to assist us as we attempt to restrain ourselves from future misdeeds, provided methods and means to successfully do this. And among them is the very practice of confession itself and purification, confession and purification. The Buddha instructed disciples to strive to confess and purify their misdeeds, and instructed in means for confession and purification of two different forms of misdeeds: misdeeds by prohibition and misdeeds by nature. Misdeeds that are misdeeds by prohibition are those that follow from formally taking vows. They are the breaking of commitments. Misdeeds that are misdeeds by nature are those we know well, such as murder. Any of those activities of body and speech that we recognize immediately as being wrong make up these misdeeds by nature. But there are these two, and the Buddha gave us a method, means for purifying both sorts of misdeeds.
Oh, that's the best. 배는 아주 개농다이나 개농이는 소다를 도마 캔내유도 아니 친 이제마도 조금 캔내요. 다디는데 장주선배 도마 캔내유바이나 아니 장주선배 도마가 아니 자동 저게 방법 쉽게요. 아니 나이 도마는 자동 저기 방법 게요. 되게 캔내요. 되게 캔내마다 예외 예바디 아니 칠주에 다 가져가서 그냥 아주 도달이 도바이나 아니 긴중 샤 캠부 잘 샤바진 표고도 아니 전주선배 도바이나 상계도 전주선배도 배 샤바 표현이 되지 오래 아니 도바이는 도질로빙 도지는 샤바제 와냥 유슈 아니 견디 오르와 어쨌든 칠주에 답을 라기 도바 캔네 제바다 개와도 샤바도 되지 칠주에 샤바 오래스 따라 신기 가는 모델을 디고저와 배나도 미세바다 아니 지금 모두 다 팀나 얘기고 아니 소 마지발렘 뭐 메자모 쩨바 아니 그 마마가 제다 아니 지파게 나선 노타로 소바 되죠 라신기 미디어와 인디 님도 또시 보내 샤바쳐고 해서 대우 차선
Now, allow me to clarify this a little bit. Those with pratimoksha vows, the vows of individual liberation, such as the bhikshu, the fully ordained bhikshu, will have 253 vows to maintain, and these may be transgressed. An individual with Bodhisattva vows has 18 root downfalls and 48 transgressions for which they may be responsible. And an individual who has taken Vajrayana vows has 14 root downfalls and 8 heavy downfalls. These may be transgressed, any of these, and when they're transgressed, they must be repaired. And so these are misdeeds, these describe misdeeds by prescription, and their repair. In the repairing of these, individuals with pratimoksha vows must repair them before the abbot. Individuals with Bodhisattva vows before the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And individuals with Vajrayana vows before the Vajramaster, the preceptor, through initiation and the rest. So this is the means for repairing those misdeeds. And the misdeeds by nature are those such as taking life, stealing, sexual misconduct, and mental negativities such as maliciousness, covetousness, and wrong view. And these are addressed through the application of the 4 antidote powers or the 4 forces. Now, the source of these 4 antidote powers are the Buddha Vachana itself, the Sutra of the Dharma of the 4 teachings, in which the Buddha Shakyamuni says, Bodhisattva Mahasattvas with the 4 dharmas may address through confession negativities and thoroughly overwhelm them and eliminate them.
rangi le sa pe dungen yong shimbe yong nyebe le ina yang nimbu topshida 상황 ina 아니 다게레스 세진능들의 제가 다르레스 제가 대인들 때 망해버려서 다시 뭐래스 어디서 돼서
These 4 dharmas then, these 4 dharmas, which are they? The 4 dharmas are the force of the support, the antidote power of the support, the force of the application of the antidotes, the force of remorse, and the force of future restraint. When these are present, any negativity may be thoroughly extirpated and eliminated. Needless to say, those negativities for which one is yet to be responsible, those too in the future may be eliminated as well through the application of these antidote powers.
다 님부 없이 아니 님부 없이 참는 비봇 그런 다기 예버도 아니 빼도 잘 가게 송여래서나 아니 되게 송여래서 빼나마도 님이 통에 교받게 바로 님이 당 수수가 교인데 토마토는 교받게 통말은 님이 통에 교받게 올라왔어 이 빼들어 간데 자서나 두 통에 대대부 통하시 넣으세요다 두 나는 코바나로 두 쇼서나 아니 나 배달만 시기래 나 병에 코바나 두 도서는 것도 선대지 만다지 아니 들레배 타려야 지도 카페 선나 답이 교받게 답도 탑시 가래는 지게로 왔어 이나신 당고되나 이 먹고도 저기 또 생기디 아니 두 통에 당고 나가 순지로 돌아와 당고를 가도 나가 순지로 또 이거 나가 순지로 또 생기는데 두 콘도 라는 코바나로 두 쇼가 따고 두 쇼는 안에 제부 통화 따고디 아니 나가 순지로 또 들어서
These four antidote powers, or these four forces, are illuminated through a metaphor. Imagine that one is oblivious to their fault. How will one feel any remorse or regret if they're entirely unaware of the fault? Instead, one should be aware of one's faults, as aware as one would be if one has inadvertently swallowed a poison. Recognizing that one has swallowed a poison, one will regret it immediately and do whatever it takes to expel that poison that one has inadvertently ingested. And so we begin with the antidote power of remorse.
예, 다 님보디 님복군도 집에 또 님복군도 집에 또 생긴데 안에 가래를 가져나 다 님복군도 집에 또 생긴데 님복군도 집에 또 님보디도 님복군도 집에 또 생긴데 다 가래지 알았으나 다 님복군도 집에 또 생긴데 다 두도 쇼를 차와이나 아니 다 갈고 선만한 가래 튕겼으나 다 대래 겹는데 뉴버스를 유버 땡기로 왔어 다 때리서 맞다 멤버를 때마다 보래. 멤버를 때마다 오시다. 곧좀 뒤니게 아니 멤버스 땡기로 와. 뒤때문에 쳐디 아니 이목 뒤봐. 이 목군도 지금 또 차대요. 그래서 멤버 때마다 신호하세요. 두 폰도 좀 두들이 껴봐야 지금 멤버 때마다 신호하세요.
This is followed by the antidote power of applying the antidote. When one has inadvertently ingested poison, one recognizing this will immediately go to poison control. And in the same way, one must, when one finds one is responsible for a negativity, one must rely on whomever it is who can protect one from the consequences. And so just as one goes to poison control, when one inadvertently swallows a poison, we rely on the antidote power of the application of antidote powers.
예, 다들 그 교회에 멤버 때 산에 안에 가르치던 멤버에게 걸어다 쭉 투에게 멘티로 와. 아니 그 겨울에 쭉 투었으나다 간다 거기 뉴버디 쭉 투에게 매사와디 아니 그 가르치던 예발을 날 도겠다들에 숨.
This is followed by the antidote power of future restraint. The doctor will provide a medicine, a prescription of some kind, and following that prescription, one may heal. This prescription is restraint from further misdeeds.
예, 다 이내 같이 그랬으나 이내 치수는 두 통하다. 아니 지금 한게 동신을 사기 매사박이다. 치 동기로 와. 이 두다 배 소로 푸는 두메사 삼바들 삼로 코로 두 두 메사와 신노스 빼들어 두 메사와 신노스요. 전다디 가르스나다 수수 베다 두사는 시기 요바다. 두드 베네 소라 두게 메사사 바지스 바 동그로와 어디다 아니 테스트 되다. 다니 안 되다. 대기 돌만 샤다. 즉 테스트 되도 졌어.
One then provided a prescription. That prescription is like the recommendation or the instruction to never again engage in a misdeed, realizing that one has ingested poison, its consequences, a wish to avoid those similar consequences in the future. One says to themselves, I will avoid ingestion of poisons in the future. In the same way, one vows to avoid misdeeds in the future.
아니 맨사와디 아제디 차그다 니부 군도 집에 또 생데 니부 군도 집에 또 생데 가서 맨사와디 다 진지 소라 법전 메사 두 메사 사바디 예발 날 도게 또 우시는 그 친구도 다지만이 저기 베제 서비스 문제는 와 베제다 보니 테스 메다사 때리 가서 당고도 두 통을 빼자리 봐. 두 통을 빼대다. 아니 당고들다. 한번 수익을 또 없애. 맨 때문에 빼대다. 땡이 잡는 수익이 땡이 또 없애. 근데 이 부분도 집에 또 없대다. 맨 사왔지. 부분도 집에 또 숨어도 이 부분도 집에 또 있나. 다들 시버디 네발로 도게 탑스이와 어디 가르스나 다 진지 소로 보전 두 메사 사버게 돈pe 돈쓸 저와 어디 아니 시버디 chen 그랬죠 때문에서 많이 다이니까 아무도 따가 때문에
So I feel as though I made a mistake perhaps as I presented these to you. So really think of it in this way. When one realizes one has ingested a poison, realizing that one feels remorse, regret, and this is likened to the antidote power of remorse itself. This is followed then by reliance upon poison control, a doctor. And this is likened to the antidote power of the support, which is refuge. And then the force of overcoming misdeeds through the application of the antidotes is like taking the medicine that the doctor at poison control would give to you. And then in the future, vowing never again to make the mistake of ingesting poison, one engages in what is like the antidote power of restraining oneself from future misdeeds. I will never again ingest poison.
아니 거기 쪽을 제야라야 다 근데 이런 레사 빌딩에 되게 타고 제발라야 된시 인부도 없이디 예버도 상고와 인부도 없이 사나 디고 거리는 닭이 여봐 인부도 없이 마사나 디고 닭이 매봐 어떤 데니 배당 된다 잘 투구를 해서
This was an illustration. We used this metaphor to illustrate the point. When physically one faces an illness, certain conditions are required for healing. In this case, to recover from habitual tendencies to engage in non-virtue, one must apply all four of these antidote powers. The application of all four of the antidote powers will ensure that one finds protection from the suffering in the lower realms that would otherwise be the consequence of one's negativities. So one is responsible for significant negativities, and if they are left unaddressed, one experiences the consequences. But through the application of the four antidote powers, all negativities may be purified. But without the application of all four of the antidote powers, it is impossible to thoroughly eliminate those negativities that result in suffering.
제부 따간다 미기we le chebala tene 제부 동에 되는 용어도 셰바 삼바 한 공부 되는 전에 아니 되는 셰바디 아니 이 목군도 집에 또 스타트다 되레스 이 목군도 집에 또래 막 아무도 가래 남아 순집에 또 한다 아무도 남아 순집에 또 되었다 남아 순집에 또 된다 남아 순집에 또 생기디 아니 미기we le chebala tene 아니 교바께로 교바께바 제발 가르쳐서 대부 미기를 내기 대부 동에 예송다 예송의 동에다 근데 거기 동에도 들어가기 시작했지 이게 아니 디벨레를 때리 제기 교바 때리 라기 시작했지 아니 남아 수지가 없어.
Now the force of remorse or the force of repentance is the recognition that from any given non-virtue, a particular result that is unsatisfactory will result. These are the sufferings of cyclic existence generally, and the sufferings of the lower realms in particular. When one recognizes and comprehends that these are the consequence of any given non-virtuous action, this recognition, this comprehension, is the very antidote of the force of repentance or remorse. It's the comprehension and understanding that from a non-virtue will come a discontent, dissatisfaction which characterizes cyclic existence generally, and dissatisfaction and suffering of the lower realms. This causal relationship, when comprehended, is the force of remorse.
Oh yeah, that's all. 니바 디 다는 지나는 니 목고도 집에 또 생다샤. 단 니바 니 목고도 집에 또 생이 디 아니 단 제시 가지는 주주고 너가 시월라 제베 주주도 러드 니여와. 러드다는 간데 숨어서는 도대 상모나 때마다 도대 상모나 때마다 아니 돈이 공부스 니도 도대 상모나 때마다 직지 돈이 공부 니지 아니 송한 대바 지금 나장배 냠 3년만 되고도 대바 쳐봐. 아니 그 고수로 때마스. 산지지 꿀로 꿀도 고시한거다. 당가 쳐봐서 그러셔. 아니 최대한 때마스. 투 트는 최대한 때마스. 아니 산지가 송아 참봐. 어디도 아니 다 이 목군도 주는 또 나나 또 송여래서.
당보디
도대 상모나 때마스.
도대 상모나
도대 또 동반이 때문에 저 유선 때문에 치 요로. 도대 상모. 맞아. юм다. 밖에 다 요로 도대 때문에 몸에 되는 되게 되는 요로. 어디서 때마. 알았지. 산지가 송요로. 어디서 때마. 아니 이번에 돈이 공부. 아니면 사도 대바 쳐봐. 아니 고수 산지기 대형 고수도 상바세. 아니 채나도 산지기 채도 송아도 당게도 와. 어디서 참아도 아니 다 대바 타바게. 이 목건도 집에 돈안 쓰기 어려서.
The force of overcoming misdeeds through the application of the antidotes. We'll take this as the second antidote power. That is, again, the antidote power of the application of the antidotes, or of overcoming misdeeds through the application of the antidotes. This is the second one. Techniques for applying this antidote power are described by Shantideva in his compendium of trainings. And in the compendium of trainings, meditation upon the scriptures of the Buddha, the Prajnaparamita, the collections of the Buddha Vachana, is one technique for overcoming the misdeeds through the application of the antidote. It is considered the application of an antidote to contemplate the scriptures of the Buddha. So too is meditation on emptiness, the repetition or recitation of mantra, the erection of representations of the Buddha. There may be forms of the Buddha in the round or painted representations of the Buddha, the erection of stupas, and the recitation of the names of the Buddha. These are all techniques that are part of the application of the antidote powers for the overcoming of misdeeds. And the third antidote power is the antidote power of future restraint, a commitment to never again repeat the same misdeeds. And the fourth antidote power, the antidote power of the support or the basis, is, as I said, refuge and the mind of enlightenment. These two are the antidote power of the support or basis. The antidote power of the support is to be understood as refuge in the mind of enlightenment. And refuge may be causal or resultant, is both causal and resultant. Each one, himself, herself, having achieved the state of Buddhahood, is the resultant refuge. Until that time, following the causal refuge in one's commitment to achieve enlightenment, this is refuge and the mind of enlightenment. These two are the antidote power of the support.
Oh yes, that number sunji top singing de la number sunji top singing de la that now so Kuramas, but some tango descendo she or this subject of she or this. That careers not dig what chebe two dame, Yogacha was. Suzuki dig what careers che you mean some ships down there and Yogacha was 6. This one 6. That dig what the che she do. China, and Jigbe, Jignesa, Yoga Gomsi kept to us. Or the that in a term, maybe the watch two some Yoga Gombas, some said. And it Digbe, Jigbe two some balls. Before you know, that was only gave some jiggy. Jibadani, quality of the Korean to make the summit, 아니 수술다 거기 일이 다리가 답이 세워져라. 어디 시열에 손하지. 뭐든.
The antidote power of repentance, the antidote power of remorse, has four aspects that we will consider. They are first, the way in which one has a contemplation of the way in which one has engaged in negativities. Upon examination, the way in which that causes one to feel remorse. That is the first aspect. The second is recognizing that one may die before those negativities have been addressed. With this recognition of fear, and by the force of that fear, a commitment to meditate upon the development of remorse and the development of the mind that wishes to go for refuge. This is the second aspect. The third is the examination of the way in which one has needlessly engaged in negativities, and the needlessness of those negativities causes remorse and a commitment to meditating upon the further development of a sense of remorse. And the fourth is an examination of the way in which negativities cause us ultimately great fear, and we wish for protection from that fear.
다 비시 나는 당국 대고 지들 제비유 그거 지들 제비 수를 딱대 교가 잡아서 sabje 다 이 당국도와 될라야 아니 삼로 당당다 대제면도 시용을 칸라 대고 샤베 유라 캠버스 와스 대고 샤베 유라 캠버스 와스 직제 sabje 또 어디지 다 뒤다 주다 나바소지 권에 디버 제버도 찌르샤바스 이다는 샤바 직세 아니 유 제버잖아 디버 똥된 제버 샤바스 아니 민두베 제부 삼데 교회 샤바오스 어디 sabje 시열에 손지.
Now the first perspective that one may have of remorse as an antidote power, that is the perspective that follows from an examination of the way in which we first engage in negativities, and from that examination, the sense of regret that follows. This perspective has itself four parts. The first is the supplication of the objects to whom one confesses, or the personages to whom one confesses these negativities. The second is the consideration of the time, the cause, and the aspect of negativities, and with the recognition of these aspects, the general contours of confession of negativities. And the third is confession of particularly grave misdeeds committed against particularly significant individuals. And then the fourth is a reflection on the unwanted consequences and the way in which this causes one to feel a sense of remorse.
Oh yeah, that in a divorce any you chamber so was and that is Juju Zao connecting was not and you said do that. Chonon Kuni Shuba yi Zosan Jeta Chanju Sem Tuji Chimbu Manamla Tamunja so a case or the Shitigi and you know what the subject Tambu the thing or response.
Now that first supplication of The personages to whom one makes the confession is described in the 27th verse on page 41. To perfect Buddhas and to Bodhisattvas in all directions where they may reside, to them who are the sovereigns of great mercy, I press my palms together, praying thus.
도저히 다채나 다디기 아니 초는 군은 슈바이 도상계다 상계다 다 초주는 슈베 상계다 아니 자주 셈바 아니 투지 첨보고 다 투지 첨보 순서마다 가서 전제 탐지 동해다 동해기 규대 대보다 제발로 껴버 된대기 껴버 대비 투지 첨보가 아가겠네 대다가 아니 루이 태모자 루이고는 차트를 태모자 그래 마지고는 차트를 도와도 소와도 진짜 대대식을 했으다 대대치는 아니 샤바식을 해서
To perfect Buddhas and to Bodhisattvas in all directions where they may reside. These Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in all directions are the great compassionate ones who have committed themselves to protecting sentient beings from suffering and the accumulation of the causes of their suffering. This is their commitment. This is their ultimate desire. And so they are the great compassionate ones to whom the verse addresses itself. This prayer is addressing itself to these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It is the supplication.
규다 남바소지 권에 아니 디버체바 칠샤바 생다 어디시 다 딜어 자와디 데스모부도데 포모메덴 코안네 체럽 디양 셴다도 다기 마철 디기밤 기도자와 니다니 티무 푸베 다는데 제수예랑 다기바 노바티는 통이나 삼바타베 고하나 샤 소디보다 설스지 시시니도 소디기다 sabji ande yuda nambe koneni dibashaba chirshaba tengiwa reso.
Verses 28 and 29 describe confession generally with a view of the time, cause, and aspect, and reads, "In this and all my other lives, while turning in the round without beginning, blindly I have brought forth evil and incited others to commit the same. Deceived and overmastered by my ignorance, I have taken pleasure in such sin, and seeing now the blame of it, O great protectors, I confess it earnestly."
오냐 다디는 디 단다 sabji 디기디기다 뭐 때야데 가르팅도스나 또 비시기는 한번 나봐 수지면 또 때야게 자원에 이래서.
So in the taxonomy of the text here, the general outline, we are looking at remorse, and these two verses 28 and 29 describe remorse.
야, 다디가 다부 뒤지고는 뒤다 주다 나바숨도 뒤지고는서 통만매대 코안에 딱 새로 코아 통만매반 안쪽에 개와배 뭐뭐 통만매반 코아는 코아 체력 탐지도 아니 안쪽에 다 가르쳐서 아니 랑 디바 디바 체바데 뭐수요레스 디바 가르쳐서 아니 랑 디바 뭐수 체바 랑이 체바 아니 쟤는 쟤도 주바 다 랑이 땀 마셔봐다 랑이 디바 뭐수 체바다 마셔봐 오게 디바 기바다 아니 기도 체와서 다 디레 랑이 배나다 디바 랑이 뭐수 마제나양 쟤는 쟤도 주바 데데 디바도 당스 아니 다 디네 디바도 뒤지고는 사람이 되거든요. 다음에 유고는 사람이 되거든요. 아니 디부 투바 다음에 대해서는 다 같은 레이 넘버 멤버 아니 뭔가 말이 왕기 아니 수수보다 랑이 거기 레 디버사와도 마신바 가나야 아니 셰이 디버사와라야 제수이라고 쳐봐. 예 대대기 아니 디버 사바디다 탐제사 디보디게 모여서 뭐라고 디보 사야들 가르스다 랑이 모여서 제바 아니 랑이 모여서 맞이나 시행을 제도 주고 아니 시행을 제도 주고 대강을 가려서 시행이 디보 제바를 제수이란 제바 디보 돕는 디보 됐으면 어려서
The time that causes the remorse is described in the first line, in this and all my other lives, describing a period of time that is beginningless, that is cyclic, generational, and lifetime, followed by lifetime, in a beginningless round. This is the time. The cause is the preponderance of mental afflictions and ignorance. It is not knowing. While turning in the round without beginning, blindly I have brought forth evil and incited others to commit the same. The aspect or the manner is under the sway of mental afflictions through a preponderance of bewilderment and ignorance. I myself have directly engaged in non-virtues and negativities, but not only that, I have indirectly, through others, engaged in non-virtues. And in addition, furthermore, I have even rejoiced in the non-virtues of others. Deceived and overmastered by my ignorance, I have taken pleasure in such sin. Wait.
Oh, yeah, that's Dagi before gave us that before six months Dagi Masevi give a dance to that. Penata Rangi gave a set of Moma Tomato, gave a Moma Namsu, and it was Sabata. And that in it didn't say delay in a Rangi and it Luma used to go to the Bomo Sabai. To Jaco is Chabai Java, the Kondo one with Shell of never to throw out into your. And it Timu Wangi and it pay that Rangi Mishima Di Wangi and it Rangi Tibochima, Mashima only Tibocheva or teacher, Rangi give us the teacher. That Shell give to Java, so that when I die, Pobudo in a Yobola Chet to you, Jinda in a Yobola Chet to you. And in Chipage, Namido and the Pogola Chet to Juba, the Tobola Chet to Juba, Rangi Samita Chet to Juba, Yorua. To imagine Shana Chedu Juba or DJ. And it's changing any bit, Tibo Chesha, Peso, Kumala, Zuina, Zulape, and a bit that Jesu Iran, Tisha, some Gaukum, Jesu Iran Cheva. Oh, that Tizusun did, Tamato Tibo Kanga to Donna Titsuna, don't be your response.
Blindly I have brought forth evil and incited others to commit the same. This applies to past actions. In our pasts, we have been personally responsible for negativities, non-virtues. And even today, we continue to be responsible for negativities carried out through body, speech, and mind, under the sway of the mental afflictions, through desirous attachment, through anger, which causes us to harm others, and through ignorance. And these are negativities that we engage in under the influence of these mental afflictions, though we don't seek the results that are suffering, that are their consequence. These are actions for which we are directly responsible, but we have also engaged in negativities indirectly, just as officers may order others to engage in negativities. Those with servants can order their servants to engage in non-virtues. Even in families, even in friendships, one can have another do one's negative bidding. And then too, we also at times rejoice in the negative actions of others when others murder, when others steal. And so all forms of negativity are contained in these three ways in which they may be carried out.
Oh yeah, that 굉장히 디버체바 디조 아니 다 망버체바 티니스타 랑게 하고와 제네 다 드링 가라가나도다 수수 드링 가나도다 거알레 열었으나 아니 드링 마람도다 산제기 때문에 지된도 내봐 아니 최신에게 라마다 쳐봐라로 쳐라도 남지기 싫어 비워봐 고급 상부 델리디 디디디 아니 배주 땅에 아니 디버데다 간가 랑 기버 디버 가리치 샤바이나 디게 보라야 교배 뭐네 아니 샤바치기 사바타도 돌려샤스 농바데니 통기는 샤바 사바타도 돌려샤스도 디게데 랑게 대응배 랑게 디발라 디바이 바셰바 아니 디바체는 등에 우유가 셰바 오 디데게 왕게 교바체는 아니 샤바치기 어디서 뭐래서
Comprehending this, the manner in which negativities are carried out, that brings us to the present moment, today, and at this moment, seeing now the blame of it, O great protectors, I confess it earnestly. Whatever non-virtue I am responsible for, because today I recognize that the teachings of the Buddha are fortunately, to my great fortune, present still, that I have encountered a guru who provides instruction in the Buddha Dharma, and I have the native intelligence to comprehend it. I have all these today, and so I'm able to recognize my faults. Recognizing my faults, I feel the sense of remorse, and so I confess all my negativities of body, speech, and mind. O great protectors, I confess it earnestly, with the recognition that from non-virtue comes only suffering.
Oh, to see that any subject homogamy. The subject homogamy, called the Deshagi, to Shiranima, to Mongol, that Desha, and another da. Okay, that's the Jordan or China, this castle to use.
Okay, with that, then, having dealt with these two points, and because if I were to go further, that would take more time than we have, I will conclude this part of class here. And I hope that maybe we can use the Q&A to clarify anything that isn't clear.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's one of this. Yeah, what is that?
Was it a little bit challenging?
Yeah. That's that close.
Thank you, Geshe-la. I have a question about the lay vows that we take. And I noticed that when you're talking about the Pratimoksha vows, they were specific to the bhikshus and bhikshunis. But there are the 5 vows that we take after refuge. And the first 4 seem like they are the inherently bad things. And the 5th one, where the alcohol can be like the gateway into the first 4, but not necessarily just a natural harm. So those are the prohibited ones, the things that are that we need to confess because we violated things that are prohibited because we took vows, right? And then there are the things that are just, everyone knows that they're wrong: killing, stealing, lying, but those sorts of things, sexual misconduct. And so I wanted to ask a question about the ways in which we purify the vows that we've taken. I think I understood Geshe-la to say that when we take when it's a wrong that's an obvious wrong, that we can purify it through the 4 opponent powers. But when we've also taken vows to not do those things, do we have an additional obligation to confess those to our preceptors or to some other teacher? So that's one part of the question. And then my second part of the question is actually to have some clarification on the alcohol piece. In some places we hear one, if you've taken that vow, one drop you should never taste. And then sometimes I've even heard His Holiness say, for you Westerners, a little bit is okay, even if you're taking the vow. So it's, so that's sort of a secondary question. That I wanted to have some clarification on. Is that clear, Travis? Okay, good.
제비 되거다 아니 띠파 카나마토와 니요로 아니 지단 제비 되거디 라 데니 소타르기 dom바다운 저요레 라 아니 데 아니 미기야이나 dom바라인 양요로 dom바라인 양요로 아니 소디 그래서 속초보다 아니 마젠보다보다 자와시 조체 네 디간라야 네 나바디 네 창마통와디 삼삼한 너버 된지 갸비로 네 고야라 게시기 수완델라테는 네 고야라 랑싱기 때고 야면은 아니 tipo Kanamatoadi. Tipo Deda Diala. Nimbo top sheet Tingroa. Negoela. Any Dombal any Lama down Java Yina. Susagi Logan Yamina Kimbo. Ponsogi Dunla, the Wang Shuya so but then the Chigoro. Chitan this Sawachella Chepe de Guadani, Tipa Kanamato, and the Yewachene, and the Tipa Shaksu Mandrani Yobit Yodo Couple to the Tata Yin and the Dambong Tishuba Yin, then a neighbor did.
But Dambodi, there was a sedan at the Kirangi. There 제백하나 마토바 승에디 아니 도바 곧 제백하나 마토바 용사디 수수 도바 켈레 이단 제바다 계획 예바이디 제백하나 마토바 슬레로와 제바다 계획 예바 제바다 계획 예바디 아니 샹두 잠바 소다디 도바이나 캠보다 로벤사샤 장주선배 도바이나 안 도발랑사데 수살레레 방에서 장주선바자네 일단 샤 뒤에 치즈는 샤고 아니 자야마 도바이나 로베오잖아 도지 로베오고 도지산 공부고 어디다 다다 넣을 다다를 샤스 다른 신지 가나마 도바 이거 다바 쳐봐라 아니 님부터 없이 거래서 어디 디디가라 해서
Yes, it's just as you have summarized it. Violations or transgressions to vows are transgressions to regulations by prescription. And these are addressed, purified, and mended before, in the case of a pratimoksha vow holder, before the abbot. In the case of a Bodhisattva vow holder, before the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, as one takes the vow from these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. One addresses the misdeed before the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And then in the case of the Vajrayana vows, they are addressed before the preceptor, the Vajra master. And in the case of inherent misdeeds, these are addressed through the application of the four antidote powers. It's all just as you summarized it. Then in the second question,
I'm sorry, Sheila. So there was an additional question in there, which was before getting to the question of alcohol. So when we've taken lay vows that are both things that are prohibited naturally, that are prohibited and that they are just natural harms, is it sufficient to do the four opponent powers, or do we as lay practitioners also need to confess our violations of our lay vows to the preceptor from whom we received those vows, or from some other teacher?
Miki Dombadi, that Zoshi, Dandebadi,
Yening Tomasa,
Niagangi on
Yening Toma.
all of the and a Nimbotopsi Sangne, Tena, and a Dipati Dagirabe Yamanas, the Himbo Yamana, and the Doja Lobangi Dunla, Shachi Chego.
제발 제외 예발 절와. 제 콜라 군이 개와 말해 하고서 이 개와 말해 코 제벌의 개외 예발 지구 유나 행복을 시작하는 다들.
맞아.
그리고 제벌의 개외 예발 딜라 빼는 무슨 빼드려요. 빼는 코 제벌의 개외 예발 딜라 라신이 가는 모든 예발 용해요. 그래서 내가 가서 가르쳐야겠으나 내가 가서 창 통해 있나 창 통해야지 아니 창가 거기 가서 창 통해야지 아니 집에 하나 가서 창 통 말을 산지다 집에는 열어와 이내 다 수수 산지 통네 아니 아까 나 산지 집에도 계속 뒷마선 산나 콜라 다시 가는 것도 예바 요 말이야 콜라 집에 하나 가서 예바 열어 다시 가는 것도 예바 요 말 하고서 아무도 뒤서 다 산지 제바 있네 거리네 이거 가라 장신 보이는 거라 통이 나지 숨어서 맞는 거 가라 통이 삼나 그 디버디 키스 집에 디버로 와 다 네가 가리요래 제배 하나 마도 마다 라지 하는 것도 네가 요래 그래서 유도 잡아 콜라 이것도 없이 참고래 제 지주대 지고 제벌 하고서 이 제벌 옛날시 디버 간가리 요다 지고 제배 하나 마도 마다 라지 하는 거 이 요래 그래서 그냥 소주 디벌이나 제배 하나 마도 마다 라지 하는 것도 네가 요래 그래서 심지지 세냐 아직도 이게 쇼스터가 제보다 계속 사는 교과잖아. 콜라라시 가는 거 예버디 라시 가는 것도 예버 집에 가는 거 예버 네가 용대로 콜라다. 그래서 리보고랑 리보로 소주를 리보로 와. 다 배는 것도 결혼이 팀이 있는데나 배는 것도 결혼을 거다 세사 초 말와. 세사가 가는데. 가버데 이내 수족 세사도 좀 봐. 수족다 세사도 나와. 지금 마세 류처를 지도라는 세사 좋아져 나와 맞이나 아니 내 사기 제발 걔는 가르게는 걔가 가서 도도 사기 삼나 하는 거 제발 네가 잘 라지 가는 거 제가 하는 것도 네가 하고서 제가 디보 유서 라시 가는 것도 디보 유서들라 네가 염도 참고서 도와 제발 지구보다 라시 가는 것도 배나 경험을 세사 맞춰도 아니 창이 내버려 오다 아들이만 뭐였다 내가 뭐지라 아니 양 삼삼 샤바니가 지고니 삼삼은 칠주 지고 치는 등이 어디에 제발 열어서
제상이 기닌기 dombat kelna de nivoto 없이 상내
뭐도 없이 치고야 다
제거야
다 거기 치주시고 네가 용거
네가 연결해
네가
진짜 네가
꼭 가서나
너
동안 찍고도 개워지 네가 많잖아 아니 치주 치고 말와 동안 제바도 개워 네가 찍고 그 네가 많잖아 나한테 신기 네가 많잖아 이 뭐도 없이 샤고 말와 어서 갖고 이 네가디 이거랑 차나 계속도 되나 계속도 먼저 상계 제바이나 거래 할래요 내가 제가 가지 또 제바 계속 되나 그 안식하는 것도 차 그 안식하는 것도 차나 하나 가지고 이것도 비죠
라소 야
세우 차서
in the case of lay vow holders, in the case of a transgression, because the transgression will be a transgression to a misdeed by prescription, addressing it through confession before the preceptor is sufficient in cases where it is a mere transgression of prescription. Now, it can happen too that that transgression is a transgression of a misdeed by prescription as well as a inherent misdeed. For instance, if one engages in the transgression and thinks to themselves, oh, whatever the case may be, whether it's a prescription or not, whatever the Buddha might have said, it makes no difference to me. I'm going to go right ahead and do it. That may well cause a transgression to a prescription, but furthermore, it has become an inherent misdeed because it is disregard for the Buddha, and this is an inherent misdeed. In which case, the further addition of the application of the 4 antidote powers is required. Now, these two misdeeds by prescription and inherent misdeeds are not mutually exclusive, and there are plenty of examples where they will be both, and so especially when the action is prohibited by injunction from the Buddha, and one deliberately, with awareness, transgresses it because that is disregard, it becomes also an inherent misdeed. So it is that this disregard that can make that difference. But furthermore, taking life is an intrinsic misdeed, but it's also prohibited explicitly. Such transgressions as, for instance, for a bhikshu for whom an evening meal, the dinner meal, is prohibited, if a bhikshu takes that meal and merely takes it without awareness, then that is a transgression. And this is different from a bhikshu who says, whatever the case may be, whatever the Buddha has said, I'm hungry now and I'm going to eat just because I'm hungry now. This is an instance of disregard, which makes it an intrinsic misdeed. So now there was the second question about alcohol, right? 나와라네 제나기
말만 나와서도 걸라
남쪽을
제쪽을 거기 내가 저 나의 제바서도 나의 제바들이요 저단 남아서 나의 제바 나래 지난 모두 창비 도박해내서는 창비 배냐가 치쇼 차대요 그래서 어서 대단 대디기 루뷰도 돼서 공부요 그래서
The consumption of alcohol has been by the Buddha explicitly prohibited. However, in all of the regulations set down by the Buddha, the regulations take the form of three cases: either explicit prohibition, prescription, or permission. And in the case of the consumption of alcohol, the Buddha permits the consumption of alcohol as part of a reduction in consumption of alcohol, in order to gradually reduce one's dependence upon alcohol, one is permitted to take alcohol as part of that process. So there are in the regulations laid down by the Buddha these three forms: prohibition, proscription, and permission.
창기 예바지도 어디 좀 되지. 의능시나 가리와 도 의능시나 내려와. 창의 까불이 예발능시 중으로 딜라 가리와서는 오마 부매지기 아니 결혼자로 영천데 아니 가르쳐를 창지키오. 창지키 양도 라지트. 아니 부매지요와 아니 결혼들은 담고되다. 계란이 아니 양면은 많이 더 튀고지고 양면은 라드세고 양면은 창도 통고요. 남과대라서 남과대지만 결혼되겠다. 그 남과대지만 도마도 가르쳐서나 딱 부매님도 튀고지는 얘기 결혼 도벌 쉬어도 그래 고선돼요. 소제는 좀 되게 제보다 개리 아니 답하게 소주 레사를 되고시 우사를 창도 통나도 때 타와이 로사네 거기 창도 통나도 개라고 해서 아니 창도 통사도 애는 거 가르쳐래 근데 라디오 가서 아니 부모님도 듣고야지 아니 예받고 이제 강가 제어를 해서 재산을 좀 되게 딜을 때네 아니 창도 예 도발랭이 도박해는 참 믹스해서 가버려 해서 뭔가 링시 되듯이 해서
Now in the ethical stories, or in the discussion of the illustration of cases of ethical conduct and unethical conduct in the Vinaya, there's a story of an illustrative story of that gives us the account of a woman who went to the residence of a bhikshu, and she went carrying alcohol and a goat. And when she arrived, she proposed to the bhikshu, "Would you like to have sex with me? Would you prefer to slaughter this goat, or would you like to drink this alcohol?" And the bhikshu thought for a moment and recognized that if he were to sleep with a woman, that would be a transgression of his vow. If he were to take the life of the goat, that too would be in violation of his vows. And he saw that to drink alcohol would be the lesser ill, and so he chose to drink with this woman, and he drank with this woman, and then in the end he slaughtered the goat and then went on to sleep with her too. And so this is to illustrate the way in which alcohol is the doorway to all faults.
아니 창이 예바군지 자와 있어 도나는 열렸을 제단 창 대신에 아니 어서 다창 뭐야 가야 진짜로 능시 들을 때네 그때 중앙에 제단 말한서 있는다 창 다들 남아서 그때 도박해lendu 아니 직하게 다창 뒤준 창망고 통통이들 창 용으로 가야 탑시 아니 창마통이들 창 사람마통이 탑시 된다 아니 남아서 So
this is the story that illustrates the way in which alcohol is the root of all faults, and for this reason it has been prohibited explicitly. However, there are cases where its continued consumption is permitted. A teacher, a guru may allow a disciple to consume alcohol as part of a process of reducing the amount that they drink. So this permission is given to those who are reducing the amount that they drink, and the prohibition is made so that others don't begin to drink alcohol.
Thank you, Kishila. So looking at the even the layperson vows, and understanding that even things in life are not exactly like black and white and binary usually. So for example, you did say not to take pleasure in somebody else's sins. That is not good. But and also not to do the like have somebody else do the bad things for you, like having an officer or whatever, having somebody else do the bad things. So how far does that go? Because even in like for example, even our cell phones, the materials in the cell phones have been taken from lands where there's been murder and war. So and that is also indirectly, like by buying a cell phone, you're also funding the war. So is that also bad? Like or like for example, diamonds, when those are purchased, there's usually like a lot of conflict behind that. So where does one start thinking about the misgivings and the like the breaking of the vows? Like I don't know if that's clear. But that's something which weighs on my mind. And then also a second part of this question is so instead of like not finding joy in somebody else's sins, but being totally indifferent to a negative situation. For example, if somebody's stealing from another person and you justify that stealing and ignore the situation, is that something, is that breaking one of the vows? I hope that is clear.
Gini gitu madan je. Susu chitani mitsela. Di chechogre di chechogi mare ani kane ani labore labedi le labore ine ngosu latlen tardu salama sala chagire pena gishigi dendesungson shindagi gidu tsawade yamena shindagi dikpa cheba dela jesu yirangwa deni ki tsam shaksa salama sala resha ni samsula pena susugi latil kapar dejashana di tujik chela ra di ani malakti di gyuchadi denzo gyucha denzo pena terka ngone ani lenyero terka ngone ngoya danje jewe karlabure makchuk dende yang yore ande tichekche yamena ni dorje palam karisa tinte do rentang chewa denzo ngoya layang mikashi ki shinda denzo ma nune terka ngone rentang chewa denzo chogi yore chom chegi yore diang yore that nature moya nature de hone is dokpa sagido chikche dene di chikche oya laso ani mishinda ge dikpa cheba dela jesu yi rangna ani susola ani dikpa ba yong ro jina mishinda ge kare la gre kuma kudu di nangmai tangne dikpa susola ba yong gre di jesa ani di salama sala dende mambo
야, 그 셀럽마스는 말이야. 세우 차로치고 세우에 차로치고 그래서 네, 제가 가르스나 당부 한기 당부디 디보 랑기 기보다 기도 제와 세저와 다 기도 제와 생기들은 어서 다 수수기 수수기 제마투가 밀 제주바 요래 아니 다다 차랑 나와 나신 다들 주간가 데스 간다 꿀롱 그 토네 데스 치중 용거로 와 용거를 돼 있네 다 간다 시고 디보 입에 찰라다 디보디 양면은 라니 제거래 양면은 시에나 체도 주고래 다 디마에 봐 디보 간데서 용거래서 아니 시행이 개와 제거를 제대로 이라고 시행이 디보 지기도나 다고 디보 저 빼야고 종종 빼는 미지가 가지고 몰라 미지로 잘라도 미지 좀 서나 다 고쳐 딱딱 정수다 다 코트 딱딱 좀 거야 돼 있으면 수도 가고 공부도 그 공부이나 아니 봐주 디보 사줘 돼 나는 디보 봐주를 수도 더 치워 모양이 내가 열었어 근데 열었어 대선이 어서 지난 되게 대시디 어서 선이 나리는 레이드 대시시로 레이드 남자 그래서 말로 그도 참아 패세우도 연구 하나만 좀 고면서 들어왔어 이제 나 고면서 위드처럼 도가 사도 때 도보디 맞아서 때문이 하나 선이 나리티도 기후 추모게 마음시도 레이드 남자 시를 레이드 시를 되게 좀 되게 패세우지 연구를 해서
Da, ni missionda ki tipo cheba dela jesu irana soso tipo dewe dele chewa. Ani top sigiro.
top 체지가 개워체 개워체로 제수 일하잖아요. 개워 배치부터 그래. 이번체로 제수 일하잖아요. 이번 배치부터 그래. 어디서
You've made it very clear how unclear it may be. So allow me to clarify. And so in negativities, non-virtues, either one is personally responsible, or one has carried out the misdeed. Rather, one is directly responsible or indirectly responsible through another. And the gravity of such negativities depends in part also on the intention. So one is directly responsible, indirectly responsible, and the other possibility is one enjoys, relishes the non-virtue that another is responsible for. So these are three possibilities here. This third possibility, where another engages in a negativity and oneself enjoys it and says, it was great that he took care of that, took care of them, just as he did. That's great. That there is a real danger that one will experience even graver consequences than even the person who is directly responsible. Now, these are all illustrations of, or these are all examples of karmic causality, and there are many accounts that are used to clarify karmic causality. So the best, I recommend that you bear in mind, or you keep in mind your doubts, that which you brought up now, and apply that same thinking when we begin to explore karmic causality in the context of the teachings for individuals of lesser capacity, which are concerned so much with karmic causality. And that presentation in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment will include stories, illustrations of karmic causality. So that is how you may clarify this.
이거 요새 사제 가고요. 이거 생기디 거기 초동점이 아니 요새 가고요. 딩모도 시작했어. 직세가 아니 배는 시행이 개화적으로 제수 일하와이나 개화랑 시행을 쳐 토바 예버디 그전 먼저 되게 준준 고도서 시행할 가스는 먼저 좀된 대기 좀된 대니를 쇼도 개부 수진이 무기 나와지도 제가 좀된 님부 쇼거로 와 옛날 지나서 걸어와 옛날 지나치도 아니 좀 된데 기부 수련이 뭐로 뒤치 지고 봐. 뭐 이렇게 난 거 봐. 뭐 술난 거를 보고 치료 농구니 빵을 술 넣는 거. 가르치는 빵도 그 제수이랑 제. 예부 되기 때 손은 들이사고 들이사 모두 마음을 들이사야 보고 영화쇼 뭐는 잡아서 뭐는 잡아서 때문에 콘솔을 겨토 예부를 겨토요 말 세상 겨워체를 빼셔나 들도 왔어 대나 시대 디버체와 시기 디버체와 제수 일어나잖아 아니 디버체와 예배를 규배만 뭐 제가 없어 답을 봐 그만 봐서 내용 그래서
Then one must recognize, comprehend that negativities are either directly carried out by you or indirectly through another. And two, another may engage in a negativity and you may relish it. The way in which relishing the negativity carried out by another compounds upon you is illustrated in a way that in the account I gave of the great feast offered to the Buddha by the king in Shravasti. And remember that the king planned the feast and fed so many, but he neglected to dedicate the feast in any particular way. But all of the beggars who attended saw the king in the extravagant feast that he sponsored for the Buddha, and they said to themselves, may we in the future have the great fortune to accumulate this sort of merit that this king is accumulating through his offering to the Buddha. And they experienced the positive results of the action of that king who sponsored the feast. And so the way in which the non-virtue of another, when we enjoy sin that compounds upon us, is illustrated in account after account in the Buddha Vachana. And so we will find that later.
약초들의 송에서 남리 뒤바는 남리 총아이가 남리 신불ting 뒤바이가 뒤바는 개라 제수이랑 총송 제 개와라 제수이랑 어디 개와 탐진하는 개와 제대쇼 개와 숙체쇼 인베 개와 dob시쇼 송요레스 근데 이제 뒤바라 되나지 빼자 리바당이레스
Chetsongkhapa in the condensed treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. There's the great treatise, the middle-length treatise, and then the condensed treatise. In that condensed treatise, he says, supreme of virtues is rejoicing in the virtue of others. It is the easiest way to engage in virtue, and it is the one with the most power. And so, by analogously, we can see how it would be the case for negativities too.
Oh yeah, that. Yani so kale jamo wa gewa sa de tabshidi. So how kana so gewa mo sa to gewa sa no. Ani rang dewa yunguru wa. Ani dunge sigiri dewa yunguru o 제가 de shemba chene. Nyame namo res and tiringo de de shamaram dunge kono.
So one accumulates virtue, and as they accumulate virtue, then by the force of that virtue, one experiences contentment, and one's dissatisfaction is pacified eventually. And so with this dominant end in mind, the elimination of suffering, we practice, then we will conclude class here.
Oh yeah,
We'll recite our closing prayers.
Rangi Jijin Tobe Lamji Ne Shudra Tsewe Changwe Tabgi Rowe Yiji Mumba Seje Ne Jewe Temba Yure Tenjuji Temba Rinjen Choji Majaba Chabjan Nyamba Yurwe Chode Ne Inje Chenbu Yirab Kyewa Yi Pende Teje Sewar Cheba Sho Teje Gyawe Menjong Chelele Vechu Changju Lamje Rembe Yang Tare Lamje Yila Pede Shin Gyawe Zeba Redu Kyongyu Shi Lazan Rebe Dujen Ruje Jin Gege Seje Medam Memo Sera Kundu Jave Ngapa Yi Nanda Lamdan Trewa Magyuruji Kanze Teba Chola Shujuje Suje Rula Sumbe Di Tude Nanye Tadu Juje Taji Jazu Chugun Jagyuruji
From my two collections, vast the space that I have amassed, from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned it. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Dagi Jine Sambe Gewandi Tendan Robo Kevara Shedran Lozan Rabali Tembe Ibo Rindu Sese Chon Kare Rave Kove Shingande Pendan De Om Alu Chon Tere Sewan Tenze Yazo Yi Shabe Sidi Barat Tenjo Je Jabe Bawo Je Da Jemba Na Pende Sambo Te Tenang Kunye Je Zo Da Je Yewa De Da Tanje Radu Tuzo Shebe Yewa Tanje Je Moa Tanga Shotu Taji Yewe Tawa Dikun Yang Tambo Shuje Ratu Chanjo Senjo Rendu Je Maje Bana Yeyu Yewa Nyaba Meba Yang Kone Rundu
I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of the Venerable Bodhisattva in the land encircled by snowy mountains, where the source of all happiness, all powerful in it. Please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these groups of virtues with a dedication praised as the best by the victorious thus bound ones of the three times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva deeds. May the supreme jewel of Bodhisattva that has not arisen, rise and grow, And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more.
Oh, Happy New Year and good night.